Welcome to this webinar today, Getting to Know Your Multiple Brains. I'm not sure if you know that we have more than one brain, and most of us think we just have a brain in our head, but actually we have far more than that. And science has been raving about this the last few years, scientists and researchers, because I think they found something new. Actually, there's nothing new about this at all. I learned this through my Qigong training many years ago, and the Qigong masters have known this for thousands of years. But of course, science is always the last to catch up and see things in the scientific way. Now, before I get into today's webinar, I want to just share that next week the topic will be how to spot and stop emotional abuse. So if you're interested in that, then put that in your diary and tell your friends. And then the next mini workshop in March is going to be how to stop bullies and unfair treatment. And if you want to know about that workshop, then go to get on the list, kimknighthealth.com, sign up for any list on that website, and then you will get details of the mini workshop. And today our topic is how to get to know your multiple brains and understand that you have 3 brains and that there are 9 core competencies in these 3 brains. So a competency just means a function. So each brain has 3 functions, giving a total of 9 functions. Very intelligent functions that we need to know. We need to know and make use of all 9 functions if we want to operate at our optimal level. And at the end, there'll be a short time for Q&A. I try to keep these weekly webinars to 30 minutes. Sometimes I go a bit over. We'll see how we go. So to start with, let's get present and let's actually have a taste of connecting in very briefly with these 3 brains. So what I invite you to do, and obviously not if you're driving or operating heavy machinery, but if you're somewhere where you can close your eyes, please close your eyes. And come inside your body. We spend far too much time looking outwards and using our senses outwards. This drains a huge amount of energy from us. We need to bring our attention inwards. So close your eyes. It's a very easy way to bring your attention internally. And just notice how your body relaxes just from doing that. And then bring all your attention into the center of your head, right into the center of your head. And from there, imagine you're getting in an elevator and you go down through your neck and you arrive in your heart or in the middle of your chest. Bring 100% of your attention and focus into the center of your chest. And notice what changes in your body-mind. Notice how the body relaxes. And then get in the elevator again, go down to your abdomen, behind your navel. You're right behind the navel. 100% of your focus is behind your navel. And observe your breathing from the navel. And notice what changes in your body. Notice the shoulders dropping. Notice what it feels like to come into your center, your anatomical center, and get centered and get present, to come into the present moment. If we stay stuck in our head, we're often either in the past or the future, but we're not in the present. And then gently open your eyes. And this is an exercise that you can do any time of the day to calm your mind, calm your body, and get centered. Now, I invite you to write down one thing that you would like to walk away with from our webinar today. If you want, you can share that in the chat box. What is one thing you would like to learn? Now, we have more than one brain, and this was written about in the 70s by Michael Gerson in his book, The Second Brain, but actually he was only really talking about the gut brain. And then in the last few years, Marvin Oka and Grant Suzalu founded mBraining, and they went through over 3,000 research papers on three brains, on scientific research into these three brains. And this is now becoming much more known, although still not that well known. But we have three brains, and as I said, the Eastern traditions have known this for thousands of years. And we need to learn how to use these three brains. Absolutely essential. So let's define, first of all, what is a brain? A brain is a network of neurons with intelligent purpose. So it's a network of neurons, and they have intelligence, and they have an intelligent purpose. So each of our three brains are a network of neurons, and they have an intelligent purpose. So let's look at some facts about these three brains. Starting with the head brain, the cephalic brain, has 50 to 100 billion neurons. The heart brain, the cardiac brain, has 30,000 to 120,000 neurons. And although the head brain has got more neurons, the electromagnetic field of the heart brain is 5,000 times stronger than the electromagnetic field of the head brain. And literally our energy field extends way beyond our body, which is why people can feel how we're feeling. So if you walk into a room when somebody's had an argument, yes, that energy has, gone out from that person into the environment, but also it's the energy field that's in the environment. And then the gut brain, the enteric brain, our oldest brain, has 200 to 500 million neurons. And 95% of our serotonin, which is our feel-good hormone, is made in the gut, which is why when our gut is not functioning well, we don't feel good, we don't feel happy, because 95% of our feel-good hormone is made in the gut. And 65% of our immune system is in the gut. So this is why it's so important that our gut is functioning well. So why do we have three brains? Each brain has a different job. And as I said at the start, there are 9 core competencies over these three brains. So there are 3 core functions or jobs for each brain. And ultimately, they're designed to work as a team. All 3 brains are designed to work together as a team. And when they work as a team, then we get more than the sum of the parts, and then we go beyond just the sort of individual functioning of each 3 brains, and we operate at a much higher level. But in order to be operating at that super high level, it's like a superhuman being, if you like, these 3 brains must be online together. They must be aligned, literally like a line coming down from your head to your heart to your gut, one straight line of congruence. So it's called congruence. I love that word. It's like, are your brains congruent? Are they on the same page? Are they happy with what each is saying to each other, or is there a disconnection between each brain? Are they saying different things? Are they wanting different things? Is there an incongruency or a discrepancy or a conflict between the 3 brains? Because if there is, then we're going to find things difficult in our life. So let's look into the brain and how these 3 brains in our body correlate with 3 parts of our head brain, because there's a link here. So we have the neocortex, which is the newest part of the brain that developed in human beings, and neo means new, and it is more concerned with our thinking and our analyzing, rationalizing mind. And then we have the limbic system, which is an older part, and it is more to do with our feelings, our emotions, how we feel. And then we have the reptilian complex, which is the oldest part of the brain, to do with the brainstem, connected with the brainstem. And this is our gut instinctual brain. And it is very much to do with our survival, although actually all three brains, or all three parts of the brain here are very much to do with our survival, but in different ways. So we have these three parts in our head brain which correlate with the three brains in our body overall. If we look at it another way, the cortex is concerned with the logical reasoning. The limbic system is concerned with the emotional, and the brainstem is concerned with the physical. So it's just a different way of saying the same thing, different diagram, just helps to see things in a different way. So we have certain what we call laws of life in our life. We have laws of life, laws of health, laws of the universe. And when we break those laws, there are consequences. So just as if we break a law and we steal something, we may end up in jail, or we go over the speed limit when we're driving, we might get a speeding ticket. When we break the laws of life, there are consequences. And so there are rules that we need to follow. And number one rule is we need to stay alive. It may seem obvious, but we take it for granted that all the time our body is trying to keep us alive. And it's just doing this unconsciously 24 hours a day. And so safety is a huge issue for our body. It needs to be sure that it feels physically safe and it feels emotionally safe. And the information I'm giving now is really more pertaining to people who either have a deep unhappiness issue or a deep chronic health issue, because this survival issue plays a huge role in why we end up getting either very, very unhappy and depressed or very sick. So the number one rule is that we need to stay alive, and the body will do everything in its power to make sure that happens. And the number two rule is that we actually are fulfilled and we're happy. We're here with a bigger purpose than just, getting up, putting food in our mouths, going to work, going to bed. We have a much bigger purpose. We're here to fulfill a purpose, and each of us has our own purpose, and we have to discover what that purpose is. And the great thing about these three brains, and when we use them together, is that they can help us stay on track and on purpose. So we're going to go through the core competencies now, these 9 core competencies of the three brains, and explain the 3 main functions of each brain. So the core function of the head brain is to make meaning and analyze and have cognitive perception. In other words, to understand things, to analyze, to rationalize. And we know this because we're doing it so much. Most people are stuck in their head brain 90% of the time, especially in our Western society. So this is the job of the head brain. And this is the correct job for the head brain. It's meant to do this. But the problem comes when the head brain tries to take over the job of the other 2 brains, which is usually what happens, but people don't know it until they know and get to know that they have these 3 brains. So let's look at the other brain's jobs. So the job of the heart brain is to do with emoting and emotions and our feelings and also our values. What are our values in life? So for example, if somebody arrives late for an appointment, you've made an appointment at 10 o'clock and they arrive at 10:15, and they don't really care about that, but you do, that is a sign that you have a different value about, arriving on time, maybe respecting people's time. We all have different values, and our values are usually very unconscious. But our heart knows what our values are. And relational affect is to do with how do we relate with people? How do we connect with people? And not just people, but ourselves, because it goes both ways. like how do we relate to ourselves, how do we respect and love ourselves, for example, and how do we relate and respect other people, and even further, how do we relate and respect with all of life. So I always say there are 3 levels of connection. There's a connection with ourselves, which actually comes first. There's connection with other people, and there's connection with all of life. So this is the role, the main function of the heart brain. And often we use a lot of phrases to do with emotions when we're talking about how we feel and our values. So watch out for how you describe how you're feeling, you know, such as I felt uplifted in my heart, or my heart sank. These are all signs of our heart speaking to us, our heart brain speaking to us. Because the interesting thing is, the head brain speaks to us in words, right? We've been very, very trained to think and to cognize. And so our head brain speaks to us in words. But our heart brain does not speak words. It speaks feelings. And those feelings will come through in our phraseology, such as my heart was singing with joy, or my heart sank. This is your gut, your heart brain speaking to you. So it's really important to listen to the truth of your heart brain, and actually all brains, all 3 brains. Now the gut brain, its core function is self-preservation, mobilization into action, and it is our core identity. So going back to rule number 1, survival, we need to stay alive. Now, if we're in a war zone, we know that consciously every day. But in our general everyday life, which in our Western world has actually become quite cushy, you know, we have a roof over our head, we have transport, we have food, we have some money in the bank. Even if it's not a lot, we may have, you know, some. Our survival is not under threat. But if we actually have a lot of unfinished business from our past and we have financial issues, then the body actually does translate that into a survival issue. So survival issues are very connected with financial issues, but the real root, by the way, of financial issues is nothing to do with money. It's to do with not feeling safe, and those feelings of safety or unsafety were actually set up very early on in life. So the stress response is perpetually on, and we don't feel safe at a very fundamental level, and later down the line that translates into not feeling emotionally safe, not feeling financially able to survive. It's very connected. So the gut brain is about self-preservation, and the gut brain is, as you can see in this picture, that the gut actually goes literally from the mouth to the anus in one long unbroken tube. That is our digestive system. And so our gut brain is not just in our gut, it literally goes from the mouth to the anus. And if we think of a physiological organism like a worm, which has a very basic digestive system, it takes in food at the mouth and it excretes the waste at the other end. And we do that as humans too. But the thing with humans is that we're much more sophisticated than a worm. And we have to digest not just our food, we have to digest our life. We have to digest every little thing that happens to us in our life. We have to take it in our mouth. We have to swallow it. We have to chunk it down. We have to process it. We have to keep what's okay. We have to let go what's not okay. This is what our digestive system is doing all the time. So our digestive system is to do with self-preservation on a physical level, but also on an emotional level and a mental level. It has a much bigger biological function than what most people realize. And if we don't feel safe, we will not be able to mobilize ourselves into action. In other words, we will not be able to move forward on a project if it doesn't feel safe. And that is the innate intelligence of our gut brain saying, no, I don't feel safe about doing that, and so I can't move you forward. And interestingly enough, the psoas muscle, which is a huge muscle group in the body, is responsible, or one of the muscles responsible for moving us forward in life. And we can have a lot of stress and fear trapped in this muscle. So if we have a lot of unresolved fear, stress, trauma from our past, that will stop us moving forward in life. So this gut brain is also connected with our core identity, because our core identity is born out of everything that happens to us. So for example, if somebody grows up in a family and they're not treated well and they're abused and put down and humiliated for many years, that will then lead to them creating a core identity, for example, of I don't have any power, right? That's all held in this power center of our gut abdomen area. Now, obviously, there's so much more we could talk about, but this is a brief overview webinar. So our head brain works through thoughts and words and visual and sounds, and we know that. And our heart brain works more through feelings and sensations. And our gut brain works through sensations and feelings, but also could be gustatory and smells. So our brains work slightly differently. They have slightly different ways of communicating with us. And often, for example, going back to the gut brain, we may say, well, I had a gut feeling about that. It just didn't feel right. Now that is your gut brain communicating to you, but the question is, did you let the head come in and override the gut? Because this is usually what's happening for people, is that the heart brain will give some feedback. Say, for example, somebody speaks to you unkindly and you feel hurt. There's an emotion there in the heart, and that doesn't, it doesn't feel good. And then the gut will also respond with a gut feeling of, well, that just doesn't feel right. And maybe there'll also be some frustration or some anger. I mean, it all depends on the situation. But there is feedback automatically from the heart and the gut brain. Now the question is, do you listen to that feedback? Do you act upon it? Or do you let the head brain come in and override with a rationalization? So a rationalization comes from the rational part of our mind, and we could call a rationalization a rational lie. So there's a part of our mind or our head brain which actually is a liar. It's a bit of a liar, and it rationalizes away why we shouldn't, for example, put ourselves first, look after ourselves, speak up for ourselves, all this sort of stuff. And ultimately it comes back to this number one rule of survival. It's trying to protect us. It's trying to protect us from either a current situation, or it's being triggered into trying to protect ourselves from a past situation that hasn't been healed. Now, when all these three brains are working together, when we actually do get them in alignment, we know how to listen to each one, how to interpret each brain, how to interpret the signals and the messages coming from each brain, and then we know how to get them into alignment with each other so that they're all, green light go, rather than one of them's got a red light or maybe one of them's got an orange light. We need them all to be on green, and when they're all on green, then they combine, and we call it our ability to reach our highest expression. We just sort of supercharge ourselves. And the highest expression of the head brain is what we call creativity, and the ability to come up with creative solutions. Because we know the brain's job is to think and analyze, but at a highest expression level, it is able to come up with creative solutions and resolutions. The highest expression of the heart brain is compassion, is to have compassion firstly for ourselves. It always starts with ourselves, and then compassion for other people, and then compassion for the rest of the world. This is the highest expression of the heart brain. And the highest expression of the gut brain is courage. The courage to be ourselves, the courage to be our true self, the courage to speak our mind, the courage to be authentic. This is the highest expression of the gut brain. And it takes a lot of courage sometimes to learn how to be authentic and stand up for ourselves and speak our truth when we didn't experience that as a child, when we weren't allowed to do that as we were growing up. So we have to grow this courage, and that is going to involve stepping out of our comfort zone, doing things differently, and it's going to involve trusting these these three brains together, and in particular learning to retrust the gut brain and the heart brain, because it's a disconnection from the heart brain and the gut brain which really has caused the problem, and the head brain has tried to take over the role of the other two brains, but the head brain is not designed to do the job of the other two brains. It's got its own job, and it wants the input from the heart brain and the gut brain, and it needs it. They need to work as a team. So who's the boss here? You know, which brain is actually the boss? And we'll start here with the heart, because the heart is known as the emperor. In Chinese medicine, they've known this for thousands of years. Classical Chinese medicine actually predates traditional Chinese medicine. And the heart is known as the emperor. Now, if you imagine a kingdom and it has citizens and it has an emperor, then you get an idea of what is the role of an emperor. An emperor is there to guide its citizens, right? It's there to do what is best for the kingdom and what is best for the citizens. It has the best interests of the citizens at heart. So your heart has your best interests at heart. The question is, are you listening to the feedback from your heart? Are you listening to this inner guidance system which is guiding you, go down this path or go down that path? Are you able to listen to the feedback? And the head brain is the governor. And what does a governor do in a kingdom? A governor follows the edict, if you like, of the emperor. So it's not governor first and then emperor. It's emperor and then the governor does what the emperor wants to be done. And then the general or the army general is in the gut. And the army general is the person who mobilizes forces into action after what they're told to do, if you like, by the emperor and the general. No, I've forgotten what the governor. So we have the army general, we have the emperor, and we have the governor, and they need to work as a team, not one overruling the other. And usually it's the governor has been overruling the emperor and the general, and it doesn't work. And when we get all these three brains in alignment, then we start operating more at our highest potential. So we have the courage in the enteric brain, the gut brain. We have the compassion in the heart brain. We have the creativity in the head brain. And then we reach our highest expression. And one of our main highest expressions as a human being is to reach a state of wisdom. So there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is knowing things, but wisdom is something completely different. And when all three brains are in alignment, they're all on green, they're completely lined up, and we're congruent, then we start to operate from a place of wisdom, which is a whole different place to operate from. And one of the things that we need in order to operate our brains in alignment, and this is just one, it's not the only thing, there's quite a bit more, there's a lot more complexity to this. I'm giving a simple version here, but one of the things that really helps these three brains to be in alignment is what we call autonomic balance. So our autonomic system consists of our sympathetic nervous system, which is more the stress, fight, flight response, and then we have the parasympathetic system, which is more to do with our body feeling relaxed. And we need to have a balance between the two. And one way that we can get autonomic balance, is a very, very simple way, is to breathe in to the count of 6 seconds and breathe out to the count of 6 seconds. And just to do that breathing, you get a clock, you look at it and you just practice, and you breathe in for 6 seconds, you exhale for 6 seconds. And if you want the parasympathetic response, this relaxation response, to be on a little longer, then breathe out for 9 or 8 seconds. So a little longer on the exhale. That helps to turn the parasympathetic response on more, to increase the sense of relaxation. But this autonomic balance breathing will really help to bring these three brains into alignment. And when we do embraining sessions with clients, this is what they're doing throughout the session. So let's have a little mini exercise of getting to know your three brains. It's a very mini exercise. And I invite you again to close your eyes and bring your attention directly into your gut brain. So you're just down in your abdomen. And I want you to bring to mind something that is on your mind right now, something that you want a solution to. And I want you to go into your heart and ask your heart, how does it feel about this situation? You're not asking for a solution, you're asking for how it feels. How does it truly feel about this situation? And just notice the response. And you can come and listen to this again later. We're going to go through this quite quickly now. You can come and listen later if you want to do this exercise again. And then go up into your head and ask your head, what does it think about the situation? What are its views on this situation? And just allow whatever to come, no censoring. And then go down into your heart and ask your heart how it feels about what your head just shared. How does your heart feel about what your head just shared? And then go down into your gut and check in with your gut. What sensations do you notice in your gut about this situation? What sensations do you notice? Or are there any tastes or smells or feelings? And just notice, observe the truth. The heart and the gut always speak the truth. The head can sometimes lie a bit because we have the rational mind, but the heart and the gut will never lie. And then come back into the heart and ask your heart how it feels about what your gut just shared. How does your heart feel? And after doing that, do you have any more insight into this situation? Now, this is a very, very brief run through of tapping into these three brains. Normally in a session we may take an hour or two to go through to get a real resolution, to get much deeper information. This is just really a soupçon, a taster of tuning in and tapping into the three brains. Our next free webinar next week is how to spot and stop emotional abuse. So I'm going to be talking about how to identify and recognize if you're being mistreated or abused, because believe it or not, it can be going on, but there's so much confusion in the head brain because of all the rationalizations that are going on that we don't fully recognize it. So I'm going to be talking about that and sharing how I came to understand my emotional abuse. It took me a long time to recognize it. And also talk a little bit about how to recognize the personality types of the people that abuse or treat people unfairly. And then share 3 steps that we must take if we want to stop bullies or unfair treatment. And my next mini workshop, which is the monthly workshop, will be how to stop bullies and unfair treatment. So we're going to be talking about how to stop emotional abuse, verbal abuse, even physical abuse, sexual abuse, and we're going to be looking at, well, why is it that we allow ourselves to be treated unfairly? Why is it that even though we don't like it and we don't want it, we allow it to continue? Because in order to stop this behavior, we must learn what is actually perpetuating it, and we must learn to take responsibility for our part in it. Because even though we may be the victim, inverted commas, we're actually allowing it to happen. And one of my favorite phrases or sayings is, we teach people how to treat us. So we have to learn, why is it that I do this? And it all gets set up in childhood. And then I'll be teaching a technique for creating clear boundaries so that we stop people treating us unfairly, and how to create safety, because sometimes it can be very scary to put up these boundaries, to say no. It can be very, very scary because of what happened in childhood. Everything starts in the first 7 years of life. So that is the mini workshop. It'll be live and then it'll be available also on demand. If you want to get on the list for that, then go to kimknighthealth.com and you'll get the newsletter and details about that. And this week we just did a mini workshop, which was how to stop loneliness. You can still get hold of that workshop if you want. If you want to understand what really causes loneliness and how it's actually really an inside job, even though it feels like we don't have connection on the outside, it's actually what's happening inside that we need to change, and how you go about changing that. And that was the theme of our monthly workshop this month. And you can still go get into that workshop at any time. You just go to kimknighthealth.mykajabi.com, or you can also access through kimknighthealth.com. So I want to thank you for being here for my weekly webinar. Please do tell your friends, and I look forward to seeing you next time.